Over 100 unregistered nursing homes are operating across the island. That's according to Director of the Standards and Regulation Division of the Ministry of Health and Wellness, Dr. Cynthia Lewis-Graham. Her comment follows a public notice published recently in the newspapers urging operators of homes or facilities that offer health and related services to the public to ensure they are duly registered with the ministry.
Well, according to the ministry's record, there are currently 170 unregistered facilities across the island.
Persons who are convicted of operating unregistered healthcare facilities can face a fine or imprisonment. Mrs. Lewis-Graham says the ministry is giving operators a fair chance to get themselves registered.
Now, under the law, the penalty for operating an unregistered nursing home is a fine of $250,000 up to $500,000 and or imprisonment as determined by the resident magistrate. Bear in mind that anyone can initiate a lawsuit against a home. A deadline has not been decided at this time the actions to be taken against the non-compliant facilities. Remember, our purpose for issuing the public notice was to bring awareness, including to operators of these facilities who may be unaware of the registration requirements, to allow for them to be able to take the necessary action to become compliant.
And Mrs. Lewis-Graham says the ministry's enforcement push has nothing to do with collecting taxes from the proprietors of the facilities. She maintains it's all about the safety of the public.
The application process for the registration of a nursing home is to ensure that the facilities are in a state of readiness to offer the types of services it intends to deliver, and we review documents submitted and carry out inspections to determine the facility's status. This is done as a means of protecting the public, which requires a multi-agency approach. For example, the municipal corporation must sign off on the structural safety of the facilities, while the Jamaica Fire Brigade ensures that at least the minimum fire safety standards are met, and the site inspection done by the Ministry of Health and Wellness, our team, assesses the accommodations, equipment, among other aspects of the facility.
Cynthia Lewis-Graham, Director of the Standards and Regulation Division at the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Financial analyst John Jackson says it's too early for concern amid the revelation from the finance minister that the government missed its revenue target in the previous fiscal year. Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark said the fall-off in revenue was due to lower than expected collection in corporate income tax. Mr. Jackson says a decline in corporate income tax does not pose the same immediate threat as a fall-off in the collection of GCT.
I would be more concerned if the GCT and those type of taxes, indirect taxes, had actually sagged, and the information we have so far suggests that's not the case. Those have been fairly buoyant.
Mr. Jackson says he expects collections from corporate income tax to rebound in the current fiscal year.
But as I indicated, when you look at companies such as NCB and Cement, these are big companies where profits have actually gone up considerably, which means that the amount of money that they're going to have to pay for taxes for this fiscal year that just started is likely to be substantially more than last year. You can throw Scotia Group into that mix as well. I'm sure others may come forth which will show continued robustness in their profitability and therefore the taxes that they will have to pay during the current fiscal year.
John Jackson, financial analyst. The Minister of Education, Favour Williams, is urging students to be responsible as they use the internet. She was speaking at an open house activity for the National Child Online Protection Committee held at the Police Officers Club in St. Andrew last week. The government approved the establishment of the committee in 2021. Minister Williams says despite the learning opportunities provided by advancements in technology, students must beware of the lurking dangers.
We cannot hide from technology. We cannot ban technology. We have to use technology, but we have to use it wisely. We have to be aware of the dangers. Yes, social media is great. It helps us to create communities. But as you heard in the example this morning about two children, one videoing the other and putting it up on social media, there is a dark side to technology that we have to create the awareness around. Students, as you use the technology at school, I want you to be mindful of what you're doing.
Minister Williams says children must accept that the duty of adults to protect them from harm extends to the potentially murky world of cyberspace.
There are mountains of educational material available, and we'd love for you only to go to those sites, but we know you're going to wander off, just as you sometimes do in the physical world, but we have to be there to protect you, to pull you back from that cliff. And that is what this National Child Online Protection Committee Open House is. It's the beginning. It's the beginning of that conversation, that awareness building, but it goes beyond that.
Favour Williams, Education Minister. Meanwhile, the Police Commissioner, Dr. Kevin Blake, says protecting the nation's children from online threats must be a collaborative effort between the police and residents of all communities.
We do what we can as a law enforcement organization and as parents and as concerned community folks to ensure that we inculcate in our children values that we want to see them go by. So we could control behavior there. We could nurture, we could shape behavior easier. Now it's in the social space, and another challenge we have is that a lot of parents, a lot of us, we are not technology natives. We are immigrants. And so we're not accustomed to the space as our children are, right? And so to monitor them in that space, to ensure, and this is where more interaction takes place now. Any child in the room will tell you that they interact more in the cyberspace or in the virtual space than they do in the real world.
The Commissioner says only a coordinated approach by all stakeholders can neutralize the threats present in cyberspace.
What it means is that we need to protect our children not only from the physical world, not from harm, but also in the virtual cyberspace. And bear in mind that many of the things that we see play out in the physical world emanate from what happens within the cyberspace. The persons who pull this thing together and decide that various stakeholders, educators, law enforcers, teachers, students come together to form this committee to try and salvage what we know as great values and attitudes. But we have to do it in such a way that we ensure that we secure our children and secure our future.
Dr. Kevin Blake, Police Commissioner, he was speaking recently at an open house activity for the National Child Online Protection Committee held at Police Officers Club in St. Andrew. The Minister with Responsibility for Information, Robert Morgan, says the Holness administration has made significant investments where crime prevention and anti-corruption are concerned. This follows criticism of the government's record on crime by a group of diasporans who staged a protest in New York City last Friday. That protest was organized by prominent critics of the Holness administration, Captain Rupert Francis and Wilfred Rattigan. Speaking on Nationwide at 5 last week, Minister Morgan says the government's investments have boosted the capacity of law enforcement agencies.
We had inherited a situation where the Army only had one mid-range patrol vessel. Currently, I think we have bought about 7 new vessels, which is one of the important tools that we use to reduce the entrance of contraband into the country, such as firearms and drug trafficking. There was a deficit in the whole forensic aspect of the security forces. We invested a lot of money in a new forensics lab where gunshot residue, DNA, and all of those things can be examined. And you have seen in cases in the court. The other issue we speak about is gang violence. There's never been a time in the history of Jamaica that so many persons have been convicted.
Minister Morgan highlighted the investment in the Integrity Commission as proof that the government is committed to reducing corruption.
If you look at the anti-corruption framework, we passed the law in 2018 to make the Integrity Commission a reality. We have funded the Integrity Commission as much as they wish. They are now over $1 billion. You have never heard any accusation of the government interfering with the work of the Integrity Commission. All the reports have been tabled, and where the Integrity Commission has suggested sanctions against individuals, people have resigned, people have lost their jobs, people have gone before the court. So there is no question that this government has been one of the most anti-corrupt since independence. And it's not us saying it. If you look at Transparency International rankings and you look at the trend over the last 2 decades, it is this government that has had the best anti-corruption ranking.
Robert Morgan, Minister with responsibility for information. The president of Guyana, Dr. Mohamed Irfan Ali, says there's a stubborn perception in the developed world that a country like Guyana does not know how to handle the wealth that comes with the discovery of oil in its territorial waters. Dr. Ali was speaking recently in New York City, where he accepted the Legacy Award from his alma mater at the American Foundation for the University of the West Indies, AFUWI. He says there's an almost sinister belief that non-white leaders lack the knowledge and intelligence to harness resource wealth for the benefit of their people.
I don't think it's only steeped in a colonial perspective. I think it's steeped in the psyche of many in the developed world. And it's not only for Guyana. In the developing world, many of the leaders believe, and many of the international systems are designed to believe, that we in the developing world are incapable. We lack this sophistication.
We're dunce.
We don't have the ability.
Yes.
We don't have capacity and capability.
The oil boom in Guyana has made the country into the fastest growing economy in the world. In 2023, the Ali administration presided over an economy that earned about $1.6 billion from oil wells. Those wells produce about 650,000 barrels of oil per day. Guyana's reserves are estimated to be at least 11 billion barrels, which is more per capita than any other country in the world. Dr. Ali says he's on a mission to change perceptions and shape perspectives about how countries like Guyana are able to do right by their people.
What we did not have was the opportunity to build that capacity and capability because it was taken away from us.
Yes.
Because we were denied it. And now we have the opportunity to build that capacity and capability. We should not allow it to happen again. We should not allow a different form of colonization to our thinking process. So I believe that, and I've said this before, that this is for us to change. This is a perception for us to change. And we must change it with strong management, good governance, and demonstrating through results that we have the capability and we have the ability to manage our resources and to do what is best for our citizens.
Dr. Mohamed Irfan Ali, the president of Guyana. A 23-year-old motorcycle pillion is in hospital under police. Well, a 23-year-old man is in hospital under police guard this morning following a shootout with the police on Bay Farm Road, Kingston 11 on Sunday night. The man, Akeem Campbell of 5A Delacree Lane, Kingston 13, received multiple gunshot wounds to his upper body and underwent surgery. A policeman was shot and injured in the incident. His wounds are not believed to be life-threatening. According to the police, the incident happened when a team of officers assigned to the Public Safety and the Traffic Enforcement Branch signaled two men traveling on a motorcycle to stop. The men refused, and the policemen gave chase. Reports are that the men fired at the police, who returned fire. The police have confirmed that a bystander was also shot in the incident. He was treated at hospital and discharged. Overseas now, Britain's former Chief Medical Officer, Professor Sally Davis, is warning that the COVID-19 pandemic will look minor compared with what humanity faces from the growing number of superbugs resistant to current drugs. Professor Davis, who is now the UK's Special Envoy on Antimicrobial Resistance, AMR, lost her goddaughter 2 years ago to an infection that could not be treated. AMR means that some infections caused by bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites can no longer be treated with available medicines. Exposure to drugs allows the bugs to evolve the ability to resist them, and overuse of drugs such as antibiotics accelerates that process. Professor Davis paints a bleak picture of what could happen if the world fails to tackle the problem within the next decade, warning that the issue is more acute than climate change. Drug-resistant infections already kill at least 1.2 million people each year. Widespread resistance would make much of modern medicine too risky, affecting treatments including cesarean sections, cancer interventions, and organ transplantation. Last week, the UK government announced a national action plan on AMR with commitments to reduce its use of antimicrobials in both humans and animals, strengthen surveillance of drug-resistant infections, and incentivize the development of new drugs and vaccines.